The glass towers of the United Nations building gleamed under the New York sun, cold and imposing. Inside, the Security Council chamber buzzed with the familiar rhythm of diplomatic theater. Translators whispered into microphones. Delegates shuffled papers. The air smelled of old wood, power, and carefully measured words. On the agenda that morning was climate finance. The usual players had already spoken. Nations with deep pockets and deeper influence. They talked in billions, in carbon credits, in complex frameworks that sounded impressive, but meant little to those actually drowning in rising waters. When the Philippines was called to speak, a ripple of barely concealed disinterest passed through the room. The country had spoken before on climate issues, always emotional, always asking, never offering solutions that mattered to the real power brokers. One American delegate didn't even look up from his phone. A French representative stifled a yawn behind her hand. But something was different today. The man who approached the microphone didn't carry the usual folder of diplomatic talking points. He wore a barong Tagalog, its embroidered front panel standing stark white against the sea of dark suits. His steps were measured, unhurried, as though he had all the time in the world and knew something they didn't. When he reached the podium, he didn't immediately speak. He stood there, hands resting on either side of the microphone, and looked slowly across the chamber, left to right. His gaze lingered on faces that hadn't bothered to meet his in the corridors, on nations that had promised help and delivered nothing but empty words wrapped in bureaucracy. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, deliberate. Then he spoke. "My name is Dakila Romero. I am not a career diplomat. I am not a politician born into power. I am a former fisherman from a coastal town you have never heard of, in a province you cannot pronounce, from a country you only remember when disaster cameras point our way." The American delegate looked up. The French representative's hand froze mid-reach for her water glass. "6 months ago, my town disappeared." He let that sentence hang in the air like smoke. Not slowly, not gradually, in one night. Super Typhoon Marites, a name you will not find in your international reports because we were categorized as expected casualties in your risk assessment models. We were data points, acceptable losses. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Each word was a hammer striking stone. 312 people lived in my town. Fishermen who knew the sea better than their own backyards. Mothers who could predict storms by the smell of the wind. Children who could swim before they could walk. We had a marketplace that had stood for 100 years. We had lives you never counted because they weren't lives that mattered to the global economy. Somewhere in the second row, a German delegate set down his pen. "Now, we have nothing. The typhoon took everything. But before you offer your practice condolences, before you draft another resolution that goes nowhere, I need you to understand something." He leaned closer to the microphone, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, forcing the entire chamber to strain forward to hear. This was preventable. The words detonated like a grenade in silk wrapping. Your nations, yes, yours, promised $100 billion annually in climate finance by 2020. It is now 2025. Where is it? Where are the seawalls you promised? Where are the early warning systems you pledged? Where is the loss and damage fund you finally agreed to after decades of our people dying? His voice began to rise now, not with hysteria, but with the controlled fury of someone who has lost everything and has nothing left to lose. You meet in this air-conditioned chamber and debate the semantics of climate reparations versus climate finance. You argue about whether island nations should receive grants or loans. Loans. You want us to go into debt to protect ourselves from a crisis we did not create? A Chinese delegate shifted uncomfortably. A Brazilian representative looked down at his hands. "While you debated, my father drowned trying to save his fishing boat, the only asset our family had. While you revised your draft resolutions, my neighbor's children, kids taught to fish, to read the tides, were swept away by waters that rose faster than your promised funds ever did. While you applauded yourselves for setting net zero targets for 2050, we buried 63 people in a mass grave because the morgue couldn't handle the bodies." He paused, collecting himself, his hands gripping the podium until his knuckles whitened. "But I am not here to beg. I am not here to appeal to your mercy or your guilt. I am here to tell you what you refuse to see. The Philippines is your canary in the coal mine. What happens to us will happen to you. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 10 years, but it is coming. A Russian delegate leaned toward his aide, whispering urgently. The aide shook his head, equally transfixed. Your coastal cities, New York, Shanghai, Mumbai, Amsterdam, they will flood. Your agricultural heartlands will fail. Your refugees will not come in thousands, but in millions. And when they knock on your borders, when your own people are dying, you will remember this moment. You will remember when a Filipino fisherman stood before you and told you the truth you were too comfortable to hear. The tension in the room was suffocating now. No one moved. No one dared breathe too loudly. We are a nation of 7,000 islands. We face an average of 20 typhoons every year. We sit on the Pacific Ring of Fire. We have been colonized, occupied, exploited, and dismissed for centuries. And yet we survive. We rebuild. We smile through pain that would break nations with 10 times our resources. His voice softened, and somehow that made it more devastating. Do you know what my son said to me the morning before the typhoon hit? He was 9 years old. He said, "Papa, when I grow up, I want to be an engineer and build walls so strong that no storm can ever break them." A 9-year-old child was trying to solve a problem caused by adults in rooms like this. Several delegates were no longer hiding their discomfort. Some stared at the table. Others closed their eyes. He didn't get to grow up. His body washed ashore 2 days later, still wearing the life jacket I put on him. The life jacket I believed would save him. The silence that followed was absolute. So let me be clear. The Philippines is not asking for charity. We are demanding justice. We are demanding that you honor the promises you made. We are demanding that you stop treating our deaths as inevitable and start treating them as the murder they actually are. Because that's what this is. Slow, bureaucratic, well-documented murder. He straightened, his voice regaining its steel. You sit here as representatives of the most powerful nations on earth. You have wealth we cannot imagine, technology we cannot access, influence we will never wield, but you lack one thing we have in abundance. He paused, letting the question form in their minds. You lack the courage to face the truth. You lack the courage to sacrifice comfort for survival. You lack the courage to tell your people that the way they live is killing others, and soon it will kill them too. A British delegate covered her face with her hands. An Indian representative sat utterly still, tears tracking slowly down his cheeks. I spent 30 years on the sea. I learned to read the weather. I learned when to go out and when to stay home. I learned that the ocean gives and the ocean takes. But this, what happened to my town, this was not the ocean's doing. This was yours. A Swedish delegate closed his folder, unable to pretend to work anymore. A Canadian representative removed her glasses and pressed her palms against her eyes. I am a simple man. I don't have degrees from your universities. I don't speak 5 languages. I don't understand your complex financial instruments. But I understand this. When you see a man drowning, you throw him a rope. You don't form a committee to study the best rope-throwing methodology. You don't debate whether he deserves to be saved. You just throw the damn rope. The chamber remained frozen. No one moved to thank him for his remarks. No one initiated the customary polite applause. The silence was total, crushing, unavoidable. Then from the back of the room, someone stood. A delegate from Tuvalu, a nation also drowning. Then another from Bangladesh, then the Maldives. One by one, representatives of vulnerable nations rose to their feet, not clapping, just standing in silent solidarity. Dakila Romero didn't smile, didn't acknowledge the standing ovation. He simply placed his hand over his heart, over the pocket where his son's photograph rested, nodded once, and walked out of the chamber with the dignity of a man who had spoken his truth and had nothing left to prove. The UN had expected another plea. What they got was a reckoning, and nothing would ever be quite the same again.